So I wasn't exactly right, but we agree I was pretty close, don't we? How's it going, guys? CJ from Suckwar Central here to discuss chapter 416, which I personally think is the single most hilarious chapter of this entire arc so far. Jumping right into it, martial law is in full swing, and Benjamin is on the prowl, accompanied by Butch and Furikov. We know why Furikov is with him. He presumably has some equipment ready to conjure in order to support the ability of Benjamin's guardian spirit beast. But Butch's ability intrigues me. That is to say, I am intrigued as to what it could be. I mean, of the six Ben men whose Nen abilities we still don't know, this guy is the one that Benjamin wanted to back him up as he carries out the executions of Camilla and Tserriednich. It's my personal belief that Butch probably has some offensive ability. I mean, most of Benjamin's inherited abilities are defensive or recon based, and Furikov is just there to support his Nen beast, so they need some firepower. Anyway, as I predicted, first stop is Camilla's headquarters in the VVIP area, and I have to say, I love this panel right here, where Benjamin and his soldiers with their massive firearms tower over Camilla's soldiers with their handguns. It's powerful visual storytelling and shows how, despite both factions knowing Nen, Benjamin's faction is way far ahead of Camilla's in like pretty much every regard. Also, it's hard to tell, but I think these two guards are Nukwakan and Taler, responsible for cursing Salisale and Mariam, respectively. And then, of course, we get this confrontation between Benjamin and Camilla, and I have to say, this is the single funniest scene to me in the entire arc. I can't tell if Togashi meant for it to be as hilarious as it is, but it's actually frying me. So, Camilla had advance warning, and yet she chose to just continue her massage like nothing was happening. Benjamin's like, hey, listen to me, and Camilla immediately blasts him with a gun from under her pillow or whatever. Why did she do this? She tried this last time and it did nothing. Why did she even have a gun? If she was going to fight, why didn't she stop her massage and suit up as opposed to blasting Benjamin with her camis out? I have so many questions. Even more hilariously, Benjamin is so annoyed by Camilla that he immediately shoots her masseuses, who had already surrendered, for no reason except to be petty. And I guess we have to wonder if they're dead, since they're seen after this lying on the ground and they don't get up. And Fukataki here was a Nen user that I expected great things from, but yeah, they're probably dead. For a little recap on the whole guns versus Nen thing, it depends, like everything with Nen. Handguns, like the one Camilla's using, generally can't do much more than, at most, scratch a Nen user. Higher ordnances, however, like what Benjamin and his group are carrying, can do a lot more damage, particularly to untalented Nen users lacking in the fundamentals like Camilla's faction, or really anybody who's not a hunter or the Phantom Troop. And of course, the further away their Nen affinity is from enhancement, the more trouble someone will have blocking bullets, since 10 is an application of enhancement. Lastly, enhancement doesn't just create strength, it reinforces existing strength in a sort of multiplicative effect. So the strength of the original thing does matter. That's why Uvagin was so formidable. His 10 was applied to his already extremely tough skin. Fukataki, however, is a fragile old lady, so I have to say, even if she is an enhancer, I think she is super dead. Rest in peace, maids, you will be missed. In fact, that is why I'm wearing this outfit today, as a sort of show of solidarity with our fallen fellow service workers. Also, Camilla's expressions in this entire chapter are just so funny. Chef's kiss, Togashi. I love how you draw this stupid woman. Her high quality detailed expressions are great, but I also love these silly little faces she makes from the background, the really low quality ones. Anyway, continuing the train of silliness, Camilla continues to believe her Nen ability makes her unkillable, while her guard Moswana activates his death curse. And she's like, haha, you're gonna die today, got you! Which is hilarious under the circumstances. Anyway, Togashi puts some insane detail into this Hell Fruit ability, especially for something that isn't going to be relevant for Benjamin, seeing as he's already on a timer and doesn't seem to care about it in chapter 410. So, in the moment, I thought it was funny, but as I reflect back on it and record this review, I think Togashi was trying to tell us something extremely important. Like, where have we seen spirits like this before? Exactly. These detailed panels exist to tell us that Fugetsu's curse was placed on her by one of Camilla's have-nots. And what do you know? We haven't seen Mishush, the guard responsible for cursing Fugetsu, since this whole ability was revealed. And yes, it's taking longer to kill Fugetsu than the curse on Benjamin, but you have to consider the conditions. Remember, The closer the target is to the curse user when they die, the quicker the curse kills them. And Fugetsu doesn't seem to recall anything that could have put the curse on her. So I think Mishush looked at Fugetsu and went, she's clearly not a Nen user or a major threat, and the odds of her having a Nen exorcist in her ranks are way, way lower than someone with more Nen using guards, and my curse won't need nearly as much power behind it to actually kill her in a reasonable time frame. I don't know when I'll be able to get close to her, so I should just kill myself from a ways away and be content with a curse that takes a few days to kill her instead of killing her immediately. So yeah, given that, I'm pretty confident that this is the answer to Fugetsu's cursed state. And it's also why Togashi went to so much effort to make the art of this ability good and detailed when it's unlikely the curse on Benjamin is going to matter. It's to draw that visual connection between this curse and the curse on Fugetsu. That said, it does put a nail in the coffin for a theory I saw a lot of people espousing, which was that Benjamin was going to survive the TSK 17 thanks to collaborating with Tabepa and using her Nen Beast's ability. And now that we'd need her Nen Beast to both create an antidote and get rid of this Nen curse, or find some other source of exorcism for Benjamin here, I don't think it's likely. In other words, Togashi is taking this opportunity to make extra sure that Benjamin doesn't survive this 10-hour martial law deadline. So, okay, back to the confrontation. This whole conversation is really funny. Camilla's out here thinking about how her faction spent 10 years preparing for this, and how she trained to slow her metabolism down to survive 3 months without food or water, which I guess is just a thing people can do in Hunter x Hunter, assuming it's not a second Nen ability, and none of it's going to matter. Honestly, Camilla is really similar to Halkenberg in this regard, only way stupider. Just like him, she latches onto a plan and puts everything she has into preparing that plan as well as possible, without considering if another different plan would be better. Her have-nots really had 10 years to prepare Nen abilities for the Succession War, and she had most of them learn the same one. I don't think I need to tell you how colossally stupid and short-sighted that is, especially when you compare her arsenal to the Nen abilities Benjamin has up his sleeve. Anyway, Benjamin goes on to infect her with the TSK-17, easy to miss if you don't pay attention to this panel here, and basically outline his plan. And what did I tell you, folks? Camilla is already dead. Okay, she's not literally dead, but she's super dead, because she's been infected by TSK-17. So you'd think this means she'll die after Benjamin, especially by how he phrases it. But I think he's being intentionally misleading here. You have to remember that his plan is to have all the princes killed before he dies, because he wants to arrange the rights of succession to transfer to him. So I can think of a few possibilities here. One might be that he gets himself declared the sole survivor by Nasabi if he goes, "Hey dad, we're both dying, but I have a way to survive it and she doesn't, so please let me be king." I have to doubt this, however. That seems way riskier than sacrificing one of his men to kill her. Butch could just shoot Camilla and then himself before her ability targets him. Done. Easy. So this tells me that Benjamin's plan will safely and securely end with Camilla dying before he does, in a way that's preferable to just making a one-for-one trade like he could. So I have some other ideas. It's possible that the TSK-17 will, for some reason, be fast-acting. Maybe it has something to do with Butch's ability, or with the ability inherited by Benjamin Baton before the Succession War started that we don't know about. It could also have something to do with Furikov's Nen ability. He seems to have spent some time around Camilla. What if a special version of TSK-17, or poisonous gas, is just the form his conjured anti-Camilla weapon took? Or what if, in some way, it's part of something that counts as supporting Benjamin or his guardian spirit beast? There's a lot of explanations here, but comparing Benjamin's words in this chapter with his internal monologue in chapter 410, it's clear that what he says to Camilla is not the extent of his plan, and he's done some unknown thing that will kill Camilla before he dies of TSK-17, despite having been dosed way sooner than her. In that way, it's entirely possible that the TSK-17 is a sort of false alarm to get Camilla barking up the wrong tree. Anyway, I love these panels because, as Benjamin says, "What if I infected you with an incurable disease?" It's written all over Camilla's face that she isn't thinking, "Oh shit, he figured out my weakness." It's more like, "Oh shit, would that work? I actually have no idea if that would work." It's like she didn't even consider it. I think that's really funny, and it just shows what an idiot she is. She's so confident and believes her Nen ability to be completely unbeatable, and it just makes it so obvious that Camilla has never thought critically about her own abilities. She discovered one trick, postmortem Nen and went, yup, that's the ticket. That's all I need. So yeah, I'm confident that Camilla is super dead, dealt with, done, and I was right, just not quite in the way I thought. However, with Camilla not being, technically fully dead yet, I do want to discuss some possibilities for her role in the story going forward before she kicks the bucket. I do think Togashi left her alive for the time being for a reason, a very specific reason, mind you. See, if she's still alive, that gives Krollo a window of time to steal her Nen ability, a theory I have been a proponent of for a very long time, because it's exactly the sort of sure kill ability he would want to completely obliterate Hisoka. It thematically fits his current suicidal ideation, and since it requires the user to be in Zetsu, it's unlikely that Krollo could acquire and use it without upgrading Skill Hunter in some way. Furthermore, losing that ability would finally give Camilla a reason to undo her Zetsu and show us her Guardian Spirit Beast, which could go on to do who knows what in the coming chapters. It would totally throw a wrench into things, like I've said. Anyway, this also begs the question, if Camilla is going to die imminently, does that mean Krollo will only have a few hours at most to make use of her Nen ability? And well, I see two possibilities here. The first is that he strikes a deal with Camilla. He could have just about anything in that book of his, including an ability that can cure poison. The second and more likely idea I have is that, since it's already a Nen ability heavily reliant on and involved with postmortem Nen, it will just stay in Krollo's book even if Camilla dies, just like Sun and Moon, which we can then consider adequate foreshadowing for this concept. Anyway, another way for Camilla to, I don't know, maybe potentially survive, is if she makes a deal with Tebeppa and her Nen Beast makes a cure, as people were speculating Benjamin might end up doing. But honestly, I can't see this happening because Camilla's too proud for this, not smart enough, and has no way to even know what Tebeppa's Nen Beast does anyway. However, if Camilla does get desperate enough to start making deals, she does have an incredibly useful bargaining chip up her sleeve. See, her soldier Unmanma here is a Nen exorcist, and aside from Furikov, who's much more limited by his conditions and also occupied, and also we know cannot exorcise half the curses in this arc, Umanma is the only Nen exorcist we know of on this entire boat. I don't know if you've been paying attention, but Nen exorcists are in extremely high demand at the moment, and literally everybody would benefit from having access to one. This gives plenty of different factions and people incentives to strike a deal with Camilla and help her out. But again, I still think she's super dead. Whatever Benjamin did to her has to be reliable enough for him to consider it a fully done deal. Anyway, on we go to room 1004, and I like the detail that Furikov and Butch are using their N to check who's inside before they actually enter the room. Also, check it out. Up against the wall here is Tserriednich's tattoo artist, and man, he really does look like the same guy who was involved with the hunting party that killed Sarasa. So people who have been pointing to a connection between Tserriednich and the Phantom Troop are eating good this chapter, since the tattoo artist is officially aboard the boat and was probably in that snuff video of Sarasa's death, meaning if the Phantom Troop ever come face to face with him, they're going to recognize him as one of Sarasa's murderers, and that could be all they need to become enemies of Tserriednich. So, exactly as I predicted, Tserriednich is in fact faking his death at Benjamin's hands. Not that you had to be a genius or anything to see this one coming. However, what I didn't see coming is that he's actually keeping Salkov in the loop on all this. I think this speaks a bit to his misogyny. If I were in his shoes after Theta tried to kill me, I would be suspicious of all my guards, particularly the two who knew how to use Nen before all this and spend a lot of time together. I would assume there was some conspiracy out to get me from within my own ranks. Tserriednich, however, trusts Salkov enough to keep him in the loop about his Nen ability and plan to fake his death, and trusts him to keep that secret. Also, he goes, Salkov, isn't it? Like, he finds out that this guy knew how to use Nen, and not only does he not bother asking about his Nen ability, he barely even knows his name. I think this really just goes to show how rent-free women live in Tserriednich's head, that he's so much more focused on Theta than on Salkov, even though logically he should have been treating them as of equal importance since the day he learned Nen existed and they could use it. He should be highly suspicious of Salkov, all things considered, and I don't know, this just really stood out to me. This also shows how his misogyny is actually a significant weakness. He's so focused on being betrayed by women that a man betraying him might legitimately catch him by surprise. And honestly, this oversight on the part of Tserriednich might be just enough to make up for Salkov's relative lack of intelligence. Then again, there's also the possibility he's going to kill Salkov to keep his Nen ability secret because he's a cold motherfucker and Salkov clearly means nothing to him. I guess it all depends on what Salkov's Nen ability is and how he decides to approach this entire situation. But right now, I am rooting for him more than ever. Godspeed, you pineapple headed himbo. You absolutely do not have this in the bag, but I at least hope you survive. Anyway, I love this panel of Benjamin kicking Tserriednich's door down. You can tell he rehearsed that one in his mind at least 100 times. He's been dreaming of this day. So Benjamin takes Danjin into custody, and we see here that he plans on recruiting Kurapika. Man, how come everyone wants the Kurapikusi? I mean, we know why. We know why. Anyway, this actually opens up a plot thread I really didn't see coming, but also totally did. The big test of Kurapika's conflict between his goals and his loyalties. Benjamin is now in control of Tserriednich's room, and you just know Tserriednich is gone from the area. So what does that mean? Benjamin has become the man in possession of the scarlet eyes Kurapika is searching for. If he's able to figure out what Kurapika wants, or Kurapika learns of this, I can actually see Kurapika striking a deal of some kind with Prince Benjamin. However, it would have to come at a cost, probably something to do with betraying Oito and Wobble. In other words, this would be the moment where Kurapika has to choose between the past and future. If Kurapika makes it apparent that he wants the scarlet eyes of his people, after all, by hinting that, hey, I'm interested in Tserriednich, or I'm interested in something in room 1004, or something like that, it becomes more than a negotiation. It becomes a hostage situation in Benjamin's favor. I could easily see Benjamin saying, abandon Oito and work for me, or I'll destroy the Scarlet Eyes, in order to really put Kurapika on the spot. Also, I have to wonder if this is the mission Bobby Mina was sent in for. Since he has a counteractive ability, meaning he's definitely not there to conduct an assassination, and has been uncharacteristically kind and compassionate, I wonder if it's his task to somehow win Kurapika over for Benjamin's benefit. Anyway, moving on, Benjamin confronts Tserriednich, or at least the illusion of Tserriednich. Tserriednich says, should we spar then, big. And then, of course, Benjamin blows him away. And I'm sure he was going to say Big Brother, but ever since this panel, I have decided that Big B is a really funny name for Benjamin, and so that's what I'm going to be calling him from now on. And yeah, that's the chapter. And what a chapter it is! I'm honestly very excited to study Camilla's character as she dies slowly and painfully. How is this going to change her? How is she going to cope with all this? Will her Nen ability somehow ass-pull her a way out of this? I doubt it, given that poison has been shown to trump Nen every time. If the Chimera ants couldn't do anything about the rose poison, I don't think Camilla's Nen can stop the TSK-17. Reviving her will fix her injuries, sure, but presumably only the ones that killed her. I doubt it's going to purge her body of the deadly toxin. Anyway, I've pretty much already gone in depth on the implications of all this in this video and previous ones because I totally called half of these plot twists, which is an amazing feeling because predicting Hunter x Hunter is extremely difficult and I almost never manage to get anything right. So yeah, martial law is in full swing and I'm pretty sure that with this chapter, we've seen everything we need to in order to catch back up to the moment chapter 410 ended on, maybe. Maybe we could use one more to see what Fugetsu and Miriam are up to, I guess. Ooh, actually, this kind of only goes for tier 1. Imagine if, just as everyone thinks the plot is about to move forward, we cut to Finks and Phaeton on their way to the Hale Lee hideout, and that dreaded text box appears. 40 minutes before the declaration of special martial law. I wouldn't mind it that much, but I feel like a lot of Hunter x Hunter readers would just be a bit annoyed, to say the least. Anyway, before we call it for this week, I know that some of you were probably waiting for an update on the bingo board, and I hate to say it, but we have made very little progress towards any of these. Rihan had some internal monologuing, but not that much, and we've kind of moved in the opposite direction in regards to Benjamin tanking the virus. I suppose we'll have to see, but it's not looking good for our bingo board in the immediate future. However, you must have faith. Remember that this bingo board is for the batch, not the 10 chapters. I have faith. I believe that this is going to be a 20-chapter batch, and we may yet get a bingo after all. In any case, that's all I wanted to say about that. I hope you all enjoyed this killer chapter as much as I did. I hope to see you next time, and I hope you have a wonderful day.